A letter from the past, the late September rain, tapped steadily against the windows of Chicago Memorial Hospital's pediatric wing. Harper Bennett moved quietly through the dimmed corridor, her white sneakers making soft, squeaking sounds against the polished floor. She had just finished the evening medication rounds, checking on sleeping children whose dreams she hoped were sweeter than their daytime realities. At 28, Harper had spent 5 years as a pediatric nurse, and she could not imagine doing anything else. The work was hard, the hours long, but every small smile from a scared child made it worthwhile. She pushed open the staff lounge door, ready to grab her jacket and head home to her small apartment in Lincoln Park. The room smelled of stale coffee and someone's leftover Chinese takeout. On the cluttered table sat her personal mail, delivered earlier by a coworker. Harper sorted through bills and grocery store flyers until her fingers stopped on a cream-colored envelope. Heavy cardstock, elegant script, her name written in gold calligraphy. Her stomach dropped before her mind could catch up. Harper sank into the worn sofa, turning the envelope over in her hands. No return address, but she knew. She always knew. With trembling fingers, she slid her thumb under the seal and pulled out the invitation. The words swam before her eyes. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the marriage of Blake Morrison and Natalie Pierce. October 28th. The Riverside Estate. Reception to follow." 3 years. It had been 3 years since Blake had ended their engagement with a phone call that lasted less than 4 minutes. 3 years since Natalie, her college roommate and maid of honor, had sent that text message. "I never meant for this to happen. We tried to fight it." Harper had not spoken to either of them since. She had boxed up the wedding dress, deleted the shared photo albums, and thrown herself into her work with an intensity that worried her family. Refusing to hide, Harper stared at the invitation until the words blurred. Part of her wanted to tear it into confetti and forget she ever received it. But another part, the part that had spent 3 years rebuilding herself piece by piece, wanted something different. She did not want revenge. She did not want to cause a scene or ruin anyone's happiness. She simply wanted to walk into that venue with her head high, to prove to herself more than anyone else that she had survived, that she was whole again. But the thought of walking in alone, of facing the pitying glances and whispered speculation, made her throat tight. She needed someone beside her, not for show, but for strength. A friend would make it obvious she was still alone. A random date would feel desperate. She needed someone who could stand in that room and make it clear that her life had moved forward, that she was not the broken girl they had left behind. Harper tucked the invitation into her purse and headed out into the rain. The city lights reflected off wet pavement as she walked toward the train station, her mind spinning with impossible solutions to an impossible problem. A chance encounter 2 weeks later. Harper found herself at the Crystal Ballroom downtown, wearing a simple black dress she had borrowed from her younger sister. The annual Children's Hospital Foundation Gala was one of the few fancy events she attended each year. Even then, she usually spent most of the evening hiding near the dessert table. Tonight, she stood by a display showcasing the hospital's new pediatric cancer wing, trying to look engaged while her mind wandered back to that cream-colored invitation sitting on her kitchen counter. She was reading about the proposed music therapy program when someone bumped her elbow, causing her to stumble slightly. A hand steadied her immediately. "I apologize," came a deep voice, warm with genuine concern. "I was not watching where I was going." Harper looked up and found herself face to face with someone who looked entirely out of place at a charity gala. He was tall, with dark hair that looked like he had been running his hands through it, and sharp green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore an expensive navy suit, but the tie was slightly loosened, and he held a glass of water instead of champagne. There was an intensity about him, a quiet power that made people instinctively step aside when he moved through the crowd. "It's okay," Harper said, finding her balance. "These events get crowded." He studied her for a moment, then glanced at the display she had been reading. The music therapy program. "Are you involved with the hospital?" "I'm a pediatric nurse on the 4th floor," she replied. "I see what these kids go through every day. Programs like this could make a real difference." Something shifted in his expression, a softness that had not been there before. "That must be difficult work." "It's the best work," Harper corrected him gently. Hard, but the best. He extended his hand. Dominic Hayes. She shook it, noting the firm grip. Harper Bennett. The name registered immediately. Dominic Hayes. She had seen him mentioned in business articles her father read. Something about venture capital and technology startups that had made him wealthy. Beyond imagination before he turned 35. He was known for being intensely private, rarely photographed, never interviewed. And yet here he stood, at a children's hospital fundraiser, looking more interested in her than in the donors. Trying to catch his attention from across the room, the bold request they talked for nearly an hour. Standing by that display while the gala swirled around them, Dominic asked thoughtful questions about her work, about the challenges hospitals faced, about the children she cared for. He did not talk about himself, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. Harper found herself relaxing in a way she had not expected, forgetting for a moment about the wedding invitation and everything it represented. But then Dominic mentioned something about upcoming travel, and Harper's mind snapped back to her problem. October 28th was only 3 weeks away. She had RSVP'd yes in a moment of defiance, but she still had no solution to the question that kept her awake at night. Before she could stop herself, before logic could intervene, she heard her own voice saying something completely insane. "Can I ask you something crazy?" Dominic's eyebrows lifted slightly. "I'm listening." Harper felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she pushed forward. "Would you consider pretending to be my date for one day? Just one day." The words hung in the air between them. She watched his face, expecting confusion or polite rejection. Instead, his expression remained calm, considering. "This is about something specific," he said. "Not a question, a statement." Harper nodded, the whole story tumbling out before she could stop it. The engagement that ended with a phone call. The best friend who became the other woman. The invitation that arrived like a ghost from her past. Her determination to attend, but her dread of facing it alone. She talked faster as she went, explaining that she was not looking for anything real or complicated. Just someone to stand beside her for a few hours so she could prove to herself that she had moved on. When she finished, Harper wanted to disappear, to take back every word. This was Dominic Hayes, a man who probably had assistants to handle his assistants. Why would he waste a Saturday on someone else's emotional baggage? Then Dominic did something unexpected. He smiled, just a slight curve of his mouth, but genuine. "What time should I pick you up?" An unexpected alliance. Harper blinked, certain she had misheard. "What, one day?" Dominic repeated. "I'll be your date. But I need you to tell me everything I'm walking into. Names, background, what to expect. I don't do anything halfway." "Why?" Harper asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. "You don't even know me?" Dominic's expression grew serious, and for a moment she saw something painful flicker behind his eyes. "Let's just say I understand what it's like to face something difficult and wish you had someone in your corner. Besides," he added, his tone lightening, "I have a feeling your ex is going to regret a lot of things when he sees you walk in." They exchanged phone numbers, Dominic promising to call her the next day to discuss details. As Harper left the gala that night, stepping out into the cool October air, she felt something she had not felt in 3 years. Not quite hope, but something close. A sense that maybe, just maybe, she could face her past without falling apart. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. A text from an unknown number. "This is Dominic. I meant what I said. One day, but we do it right. Tell me everything." Harper smiled, feeling the knot in her chest loosen just slightly. She climbed into her car and drove home through the quiet city streets, already composing in her mind the long explanation she would need to give this stranger who had agreed to step into her mess. The invitation still sat on her kitchen counter, but for the first time since it arrived. Harper did not feel afraid to look at it. She had 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks to turn a desperate request into something that might actually work. And somehow, with Dominic Hayes agreeing to stand beside her, the impossible suddenly felt possible. The wedding was coming, ready or not. But now, at least, she would not face it alone. The arrival, the morning of October 28th, dawned clear and bright. Oh, the kind of autumn day that belonged in wedding magazines. Harper stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying the last touches of makeup with hands that would not stop shaking. She had chosen a deep emerald dress that hugged her curves before flowing gracefully to her knees. Elegant but not trying too hard. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and she wore the pearl earrings her grandmother had given her for courage. Her phone buzzed. Dominic's text read simply, "Downstairs. Ready when you are?" Harper grabbed her clutch, took one last steadying breath, and headed down to the street. The black car waiting at the curb was understated but expensive, and when Dominic stepped out to open her door, Harper's breath caught. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit with a crisp white shirt, no tie, the top button undone. His dark hair was styled back, and those green eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her forget for a moment why they were doing this.
"Ow."
"You look beautiful," he said quietly, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe him. "Thank you for this," Harper whispered as she slid into the car. "I know it's asking a lot." Dominic settled beside her as the driver pulled away from the curb. "You've told me the story. I know what we're walking into. But Harper, I need you to understand something. Once we walk through those doors, I'm not pretending. Not about standing with you." She did not know how to respond to that, so she simply nodded, watching the city give way to suburbs and then to the rolling countryside where the riverside estate sprawled across manicured lawns. The venue was stunning, a restored mansion overlooking a lake, with white tents and flower arrangements that probably cost more than Harper made in 6 months. Cars lined the circular drive, guests in elegant attire making their way toward the ceremony site. Entering the Lion's Den when Harper and Dominic emerged from the car, she felt the shift immediately. Conversations paused. Heads turned. She recognized faces from her past, friends from college, colleagues from Blake's law firm, family members who had stopped calling after the broken engagement. They all stared, trying to place her, trying to understand who the striking man beside her was. Dominic offered his arm. Harper took it, grateful for the solid strength of him beside her. They walked up the stone pathway, past gardens bursting with late-season roses, toward the outdoor ceremony space. A string quartet played something classical and romantic. White chairs formed perfect rows on either side of a flower-draped aisle. At the altar, beneath an arch woven with autumn leaves and cream roses, stood Blake Morrison. Harper had not seen him in person since the day he returned her engagement ring by messenger. He looked older now, his blonde hair shorter, his jaw sharper. He wore a black tuxedo and a smile that froze when he saw her. His blue eyes went wide, tracking from her face to Dominic and back again. She watched him swallow hard, watched the color drain slightly from his face. Then Natalie appeared from the bridal suite. Radiant in ivory lace, her dark hair swept up in an elaborate style. She was laughing at something her sister said, but the laughter died when she spotted Harper. For just a moment, something like guilt flickered across her face before she masked it with a tight smile. Harper signed the guest book with steady hands while Dominic stood close behind her, his presence a shield against the whispers starting to ripple through the crowd. She could hear the questions. Who is that with Harper? Is that Dominic Hayes? What is someone like him doing here? They found seats 4 rows back, neither front nor hidden. Perfect positioning. Dominic helped her sit, then settled beside her, his hand finding hers and holding it gently. To anyone watching, they looked like an established couple, comfortable and connected. Harper focused on breathing, on not letting the memories overwhelm her. Ceremony tensions. The ceremony began with all the traditional elegance. Bridesmaids in dusty blue processed down the aisle. Groomsmen took their positions. The officiant welcomed everyone with practiced warmth. But when Natalie appeared for her grand entrance, walking toward Blake on her father's arm, Harper felt Dominic's hand tighten on hers. "You okay?" he whispered. "I will be," she whispered back, and realized she meant it. The vows were standard. Borrowed poetry about eternal love and unwavering commitment. Harper watched Blake's face as he spoke, saw how his eyes kept drifting toward where she sat. How his voice wavered on the word faithfulness. Natali. Two seemed distracted, her gaze finding Harper more than once. Something unreadable in her expression. When the officiant pronounced them married and Blake kissed his bride, applause erupted. Harper clapped politely, feeling nothing but a distant sadness for who she used to be. The girl who once believed this would be her moment. The reception moved to the grand ballroom inside the mansion. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Tables dressed in ivory linens surrounded a polished dance floor. A jazz band played smooth standards while servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Harper and Dominic found their assigned table, surrounded by people she vaguely remembered from Blake's work circle. The confrontation. Begins dinner was served in elegant courses. Harper picked at her food, hyper-aware of the glances coming their way. The woman across from them, dripping with diamonds, finally broke the ice. "So, Mr. Hayes, what brings you to Chicago? Business or pleasure?" Dominic smiled politely. "A bit of both. I'm exploring investment opportunities in medical technology." Another guest jumped in. "You're in venture capital, correct?" "I read about your firm in Forbes, among other things," Dominic replied vaguely, clearly used to deflecting attention. Then Blake's voice cut across the table, sharp and unexpected. "Quite a coincidence? Harper showing up with someone so high profile? Almost like it was planned for maximum impact." The table went quiet. Harper felt her face flush, but Dominic's expression remained perfectly calm. "I'm not sure I follow," Dominic said evenly. Blake leaned back in his chair, wine glass in hand, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Just interesting timing. My wedding, Harper's first public appearance in years, and she brings Chicago's most mysterious entrepreneur. Makes a statement, doesn't it?" "Blake," Harper said quietly, finding her voice. "Don't do this." "Do what?" Blake's tone carried an edge now. "I'm just making conversation. Wondering how someone like you," he gestured at Dominic, "ends up at a wedding with someone who spends her days wiping kids' noses for $30 an hour." The insult landed like a slap. Harper's breath caught, tears threatening. But before she could respond, Dominic set down his fork with deliberate care and turned his full attention to Blake. "You know what's interesting?" Dominic's voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. "How people reveal who they really are when they feel threatened." Blake's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" "The truth unleashed," Dominic continued, his tone conversational, but his words precisely aimed. 3 years ago, Harper was planning to marry you. She had picked out flowers, chosen bridesmaid dresses, written vows. She trusted you completely." "Ancient history," Blake said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Is it?" Dominic asked. "Because I did some research after Harper told me her story. Professional curiosity. I wanted to understand the kind of man who could do what you did." Harper stared at Dominic, her heart pounding. "What are you talking about?" Dominic's eyes never left Blake, whose face had gone pale. 6 months before your scheduled wedding, you started an affair with Natalie. Not 3 weeks before, like you told people. 6 months. There are credit card receipts for hotel rooms. Restaurant reservations for 2 flights to Miami that neither of you mentioned to Harper. Gasps erupted around the table. Nearby guests turned to listen. Harper felt the room tilt. "You're lying," Blake said, but his voice shook. "I'm really not," Dominic replied calmly. "You kept Harper as your fiancée because she made you look good. Stable, caring, perfect for your law firm's family-oriented image. Meanwhile, you were building a life with someone else. When it became too complicated to maintain both relationships, you chose the easier exit. You called off the wedding and blamed timing, blamed circumstances, anything but your own choices." Natalie had appeared beside the table, her face stricken. "Blake, what is he talking about?" Blake stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "This is my wedding. How dare you come here and make accusations?" Dominic stood as well, his height giving him a clear advantage. "These aren't accusations. They're facts. Harper deserved the truth 3 years ago. She deserves it now." The ballroom had gone silent, except for the confused band still playing in the background. Harper sat frozen, processing everything. 6 months. He had lied to her for 6 months, smiled at her across dinner tables, kissed her goodnight, planned a future while living a double life. Natalie's voice cracked. I didn't know. He told me you two had already broken up when we started. Harper finally found her voice. That's not true, is it, Blake? Blake's jaw clenched. He looked around at the hundreds of guests now watching, at his parents staring in horror, at his new bride whose wedding day was crumbling. Everyone needs to mind their own business. Garden sanctuary. Harper stood on shaking legs. She needed air, needed space, needed anything but this ballroom full affeting stares and whispered shock. She walked quickly toward the French doors leading to the garden. Barely seeing where she was going through the blur of tears, the evening air was cool against her flushed skin. She made it to a stone bench hidden behind a hedge of lavender before her legs gave out. She sank down, pressing her hands to her face, trying to breathe through the sobs that wanted to escape. 6 months. All those nights she had blamed herself, wondered what she did wrong, questioned why she had not been enough. And the whole time, it was never about her. It was about his cowardice, his selfishness, his complete disregard for her heart. Footsteps approached, and she knew without looking that it was Dominic. He sat beside her, not speaking, just present. After a moment, he shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders. I'm sorry, Harper finally said, her voice rough. I brought you into this mess. You didn't bring me anywhere I didn't choose to be. Dominic replied gently. She turned to look at him. This man who was essentially a stranger, who had just blown up a wedding to defend her. Why did you do that? You could have just sat there, played along, and walked away. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes reflecting the garden lights. 5 years ago, I was engaged too. Her name was Rachel. I found out 2 weeks before our wedding that she had been lying about everything, using me for money, for status, planning to leave right after the ceremony with a payout. I confronted her and she laughed. Said I was too stupid to see what was right in front of me. Harper's breath caught. Dominic, I'm so sorry. Never told anyone the full story, he continued. I just disappeared, became the reclusive tech guy, avoided anything personal. But watching you try to be brave tonight, seeing him belittle you at that table, I remembered what it felt like to be made small by someone who should have protected you. I couldn't let him get away with it. Tears spilled down Harper's cheeks, but they felt different now. Not tears of pain, but of release, of being truly seen and defended by someone who understood. Thank you, she whispered. Dominic reached up, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You asked me to pretend for one day. But Harper, I stopped pretending the moment we walked through those doors. Maybe even before that. Her heart stuttered. What are you saying? I'm saying that this started as a favor, but somewhere between the gala and this garden, it became real for me. You became real. And I don't want this to end when we leave here. A real beginning. Harper searched his face, looking for doubt, for pity, for anything false. She found only honesty and something that looked like hope. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I'm broken pieces trying to look whole. You're not broken, Dominic said firmly. You're healing. There's a difference. And I'm not asking for perfect. I'm just asking for a chance to see where this goes. No pretending, no timelines, just real. Music drifted from the ballroom, something slow and sweet. Without the weight of performance, without the pressure of pretending, Harper let herself lean into him. Dominic's arms came around her, solid and safe. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she could breathe fully inside the mansion. The wedding continued in awkward chaos. Blake and Natalie tried to salvage their reception, but the damage was done. Guests whispered, phones captured everything, and by morning, the story would be everywhere. But Harper, sitting in the garden with Dominic, felt only peace. We should probably leave, she said eventually. Probably, Dominic agreed. But neither of them moved. They sat together as the stars emerged. As the temperature dropped, as the music inside finally stopped, and when they did finally stand, when Dominic helped her to her feet and kept her hand in his, it felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. The car was waiting. They drove back toward the city in comfortable silence. Harper's head resting on Dominic's shoulder, his jacket still wrapped around her. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, what headlines would scream, what consequences would follow. But for the first time since that cream-colored invitation arrived, she felt free. "Thank you for being my fake date," she said softly as the city lights appeared on the horizon. Dominic's lips curved into a small smile. "Thank you for letting me be your real one." The morning after, Harper woke to 63 missed calls and her phone vibrating continuously on the nightstand. Sunlight streamed through her apartment windows, too bright, too cheerful for what she knew was waiting. She had turned her phone off after Dominic dropped her home at midnight. Too emotionally exhausted to face whatever storm was brewing. Now, with morning coffee in hand and her heart rate already climbing, she unlocked the screen. The headlines hit like waves. Mystery man exposes wedding betrayal and dramatic confrontation. Nurse Harper Bennett's revenge at ex's wedding. Tech billionaire Dominic Hayes defends date with shocking revelations. The photos were everywhere. Harper walking into the venue on Dominic's arm. Blake's face, frozen in shock. The moment Dominic stood at that table, authority radiating from every line of his body. And worst of all, Harper crying in the garden. Dominic's jacket around her shoulders, looking vulnerable and exposed. The comment sections were brutal. Half the internet painted her as a vengeful ex who orchestrated the whole thing for attention. The other half called Dominic her sugar daddy, implying she had traded nursing scrubs for designer dresses and expensive dates. Think pieces appeared questioning her character, her motives, her right to attend the wedding at all. A few defended her, pointing out Blake's documented dishonesty. But those voices were drowned in the noise. By noon, 3 mothers had emailed the hospital requesting Harper be removed from their children's care teams. The words unprofessional and publicity seeker appeared multiple times. Her supervisor, kind Dr. Patricia Reeves, called asking her to come in for a meeting. Harper's hands shook as she dressed, pulling on jeans and a sweater, trying to make herself small and invisible. Professional Fallout Chicago memorials, administrative offices, smelled like industrial cleaner and stress. Harper sat across from Dr. Reeves, whose normally warm expression was tight with concern. On the desk between them lay printed articles, screenshots of social media posts, and formal complaint letters. "Harper, I've known you for 5 years," Dr. Reeves began. "You're one of our best nurses. The kids adore you, but I'm getting pressure from the board." "I understand," Harper said quietly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I never wanted any of this attention. I believe you. But 3 families have formally requested reassignment. Others are asking questions. The hospital's reputation matters, especially in fundraising season. The board is suggesting a leave of absence until things settle down." The words felt like a physical blow. Harper had poured herself into this job, found purpose in the pediatric wing, built relationships with families during their darkest times. Now she was being punished for being publicly humiliated 3 years ago and finally standing up for herself. "How long?" Harper asked. Dr. Reeves looked pained. They didn't specify. "Indefinite leave, effective immediately." "Harper, I'm so sorry." Harper left the hospital in a daze, walking past the pediatric wing, where colorful murals brightened sterile walls. Past the nurses' station, where her coworkers avoided eye contact. She cleaned out her locker, packed up the photos on her desk, and handed in her badge without ceremony. By the time she reached her car, the tears had started. She drove aimlessly, unable to face her empty apartment, unable to think about a future that had become completely uncertain. Her phone rang again. This time, she answered. "Harper, it's Dominic. I've been calling all morning." His voice was the first thing that had felt solid all day. "I know, I'm sorry. Everything just exploded. Where are you?" Concern threaded through his words. "Driving nowhere. Everywhere." She laughed, but it came out broken. "I just got put on indefinite leave from the hospital. Parents don't want the scandalous nurse touching their kids." Silence on the other end. Then, "Give me your location. I'm coming to you." Public declaration. 20 minutes later, Harper sat in Dominic's car in the parking lot of a lakefront park. He had brought coffee and pastries she could not eat, but mostly he brought presents, sitting quietly while she cried, not offering empty reassurances, just being there. "I've destroyed everything," Harper finally said, wiping her eyes with the tissue he offered. "My job, my reputation, my entire life, just because I wanted to prove I had moved on." "You didn't destroy anything," Dominic said firmly. "They did. Blake, with his lies, the media with their assumptions, people with their judgment. You just existed, Harper. You just tried to reclaim a piece of your dignity. I should never have asked you to come with me. You didn't deserve to be dragged into this mess." Dominic turned to face her fully. "I made a choice. I don't regret it. And I'm not done making choices that involve you, if you'll let me." Harper's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "There's a foundation gala tonight. Children's Healthcare Alliance, raising money for pediatric programs across the Midwest. I was planning to attend alone, write a check, and leave. But I want you to come with me." "Dominic, no. More publicity is the last thing I need." "Exactly why we're going to control the narrative," he said. "Let me show people who you really are, not who tabloids want them to believe." "How would that even work?" His green eyes shelled hers with absolute certainty. "Trust me, please." Harper thought about hiding in her apartment, about letting the world define her story, about everything she had lost in the past 24 hours. Then she thought about the garden last night, about Dominic's arms around her, about his words. "I stopped pretending the moment we walked through those doors. Okay?" she whispered. "I trust you." The gala speech, the grand pavilion glittered with Chicago's elite. Diamond necklaces caught the light from massive chandeliers. Tuxedos and evening gowns filled the ballroom, where a silent auction showcased luxury vacations and exclusive experiences. Harper wore a simple navy dress Dominic had sent to her apartment that afternoon. Elegant but understated, with a note that read, "Be yourself. That's all you need to be." They entered together, and immediately conversations shifted. Harper felt the weight of judgment, the curiosity, the barely concealed gossip. She wanted to run, but Dominic's hand on the small of her back kept her grounded. "Just stay with me," he murmured. They made small talk with donors, Dominic deflecting questions about the wedding with practiced ease. Harper tried to smile, tried to seem unaffected, but inside she was screaming. Then the evening program began. The foundation director gave a speech about pediatric healthcare challenges. A young patient shared her recovery story. And then the director introduced a surprise speaker. "Please welcome Dominic Hayes, whose foundation has been a cornerstone supporter of children's medical care across our region." Applause filled the room as Dominic stood. He walked to the stage with quiet confidence, but when he reached the microphone, Harper saw his hand tighten slightly on the podium. This was not comfortable for him either. He was just choosing her over his own discomfort. "I don't usually speak at these events," Dominic began, his voice carrying clearly. "I prefer to support from the background, write checks, and stay invisible. But tonight, I need to be visible, because someone important to me is being crucified in the court of public opinion for crimes she didn't commit." The room went silent. Harper's heart hammered. "2 days ago, I attended a wedding with Harper Bennett," Dominic continued. "Many of you have read about it. The headlines painted her as vengeful, calculating, manipulative. None of those things are true. What is true is that Harper is a pediatric nurse who has dedicated her life to caring for sick children. She works double shifts when the ward is understaffed. She sits with scared kids at 3 in the morning, holding their hands through pain. She buys art supplies with her own money so patients have something beautiful to focus on besides their illness." Harper felt tears streaming down her face, but could not move to wipe them away. 3 years ago, Harper was betrayed by someone she trusted completely, Dominic said, his voice strengthening. And yesterday, she was betrayed again by a society that punishes victims for having the audacity to heal publicly. She has done nothing wrong. She attended a wedding she was invited to. She held her head high despite pain. And when confronted with more lies, she did not fight back. "I did that for her, because someone needed to." He paused, searching the crowd until he found her. "Harper, would you come up here, please?" Harper froze. Every instinct screamed to refuse to stay hidden. But Dominic's eyes held hers with such certainty, such faith, that she found herself standing, walking through the silent crowd, climbing the stairs to the stage on legs that barely held her. When she reached him, Dominic took her hand. "A new truth, this woman," he said, speaking to the audience but looking at her, "has shown me what real strength looks like. Not the kind that dominates or demands attention, but the kind that keeps showing up, keeps caring, keeps believing in goodness, even when the world proves otherwise." She didn't need me to defend her at that wedding. She needed me to stand with her. And I will keep standing with her, not as a pretend date, not as a publicity stunt, but as someone who recognizes extraordinary character when he sees it. The room was absolutely silent. Harper could hardly breathe. "So here's the real story," Dominic continued, addressing the crowd now. "Harper Bennett is not a scandal. She is not a headline. She is a person who deserves respect, privacy, and the chance to move forward without judgment. And anyone who questions her character knows absolutely nothing about what character actually means." He turned back to Harper. "I'm sorry I let the world judge you. I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner. But I'm not sorry I met you, and I'm not sorry I'm falling for you." Harper's sob caught in her throat. The words hung in the air, honest and exposed, witnessed by hundreds of people who had come expecting charity speeches and salmon dinners. Then applause started. Slow at first, one person clapping, then another, building into a standing ovation that shook the chandeliers. Not for the drama, but for the truth. For the rare moment when someone powerful used their platform not for themselves, but for someone who needed defending. Dominic pulled Harper close, letting her hide her face against his chest while the applause continued. "Still trust me?" he whispered. She nodded against him, unable to speak. That night the headlines changed. "Man defends nurse's honor in powerful gala speech." The real story behind Harper Bennett. Dominic Hayes goes public for love. The narrative shifted, not entirely, but enough. Enough that the hospital board reconsidered. Enough that parents sent apology emails. Enough that Harper could breathe again. 1 year later, autumn painted Chicago in gold and crimson. Harper stood in the bright, sun-filled space of New Horizons Pediatric Art Center, watching 12 children from underserved communities paint murals on walls specifically designed for their creativity. The center had opened 6 months ago, funded by an anonymous donor everyone suspected was Dominic. Though he never confirmed it, Harper wore paint-stained jeans and an oversized flannel shirt, her hair in a messy ponytail. She taught art therapy 3 days a week, helping kids process trauma and illness through creativity. The other 2 days she consulted with hospitals on integrating art programs into pediatric care. It was not the career she had planned, but it was the one she had built from the ashes of her old life. The door chimed, and Dominic entered. Carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing casual clothes, rare for him. He had changed too over the past year. Still private, still selective about public appearances, but more present in his own life. He attended city council meetings about affordable housing. He mentored young entrepreneurs. He showed up at the art center every Monday, helping kids mix, paint, and listening to their stories. "Hey," Harper said, accepting the coffee with a smile that had become as natural as breathing. "Hey yourself," he replied, kissing her temple. "How's the mural coming?" They walked to where a shy 8-year-old named Jesse was painting a garden bursting with impossible flowers. Purple trees, bluegrass, flowers in every color imaginable. "It's perfect," Harper said, kneeling beside him. "What made you choose these colors?" Jesse shrugged. "They make me happy." "Is that okay?" "That's the only thing that matters," Harper assured him. Dominic crouched beside them. "Can I help with that tree? I'm terrible at painting, but I can follow directions." Jesse giggled. "Okay, but you have to use orange. Everything needs orange." As Dominic carefully painted orange branches under Jesse's critical supervision, Harper watched them with a fullness in her chest that still surprised her. This life, built from humiliation and heartbreak, had become something she would not trade for anything. That evening, They walked along the lakefront as the sun set, painting the water in shades of pink and gold. They did not talk much, comfortable in the silence that came from truly knowing someone. Dominic's hand held hers loosely, naturally. "I was thinking," Harper said as they paused to watch sailboats drift past, "about that wedding." "About everything that happened? Regrets?" Dominic asked carefully. "The opposite. I spent 3 years thinking that day broke me, but it didn't. It freed me. Without that invitation, I never would have met you. I never would have found this work. I would still be hiding from my own life." Dominic pulled her closer. "For what it's worth, I'm grateful for cream-colored invitations and desperate requests from beautiful nurses at charity galas." Harper laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Still can't believe I asked a stranger to be my fake date?" "Best decision you ever made," he teased. "Second best," she corrected, looking up at him. "The best was deciding to stop pretending, period. With you, with myself, with everyone." He kissed her then, soft and sure, tasting like coffee and promises. When they pulled apart, the city lights were beginning to sparkle around them. "Come on," Dominic said, tugging her hand. "I have something to show you." He walked to his car, drove through familiar streets until they reached Harper's apartment building. But instead of parking outside, Dominic pulled into the garage of the building next door, a renovated brownstone Harper had always admired. "What are we doing here?" she asked. "Come see." He led her inside, up 3 flights of stairs, to a corner unit with tall windows and original hardwood floors. The space was empty except for one room, where canvases leaned against walls. Easels stood ready, and supplies filled shelves. A studio, perfect and waiting. "Dominic, what is this?" "Your space," he said simply. "I know your apartment is small and you've been wanting room to paint, so I bought this unit. It's yours. For your art. For whatever you need. No strings, no expectations, just space to create."